So any questions that came up from your discussions? If you did discuss. Yes.
Okay, attachment.
Yes.
Our root guru, our gurus, our deities, Buddha, are we attached to them?
Okay. So, darling, when we can really, it's really hard for us to hear it this way because we don't talk this way in our culture. We, when we hear it, when we hear the word attachment and when we hear even the description, we kind of hear it as liking something. Do you hear me? Or even feeling close to something. But that's virtuous. I mean, being close to somebody and loving a person or feeling devoted to somebody, that's a virtuous state of mind. And necessarily it is not delusional, it's not ridiculous, it's not distorted, it's not disturbing, it's not a mental illness, it's not an affliction. Can you hear me? But we conflate them. So attachment, if you had it without any virtue tempering it, you would be a vampire. It would be a monstrous state of mind. It's completely greedy, it's grasping, it's self-centered, it's neurotic, it's delusional. You can try and hear that. So we all recognize it, but fortunately, we have, along with that, we have love and compassion. Do you understand? Now, if you were attached to your teacher, you'd be a fanatic. I mean, I hear that some girls used to climb outside Rama's room, trying to get inside his room, obsessed with him all day. That's called ridiculous, over-the-top attachment. Do you understand my point? That's neurotic ridiculous, when you're obsessed with somebody. On the other hand, the other point is this. Attachment exaggerates the deliciousness of something. So if you do that, it's only delusional, generally speaking, and then eventually you'll get fed up with it and you'll get bored in 2 minutes. So if you're even attached to your practice, it would be like this. You say you're attached to being a Buddhist, you're all holy with your relationship and he wants to sort of hop into bed with you. Oh no, I'm a Buddhist, I'm renounced. And you're meditating. Please be quiet, I'm trying to meditate. That shows it's not really practice at all, you're polluting it. It's called attachment. It's neurotic and self-obsessed. Do you understand when it's a delusion? Now, given the attachment is really primordially deep in us, do you understand? It's a long time before you get rid of it. Then given that on the bodhisattva path especially, then you can talk about, given that you've got attachment, at least if you're going to have a partner, have a nice partner. If you're going to have a job, have a good job that benefits others. If you're going to eat food, at least be attached to food, at least be attached to food that will help you. Do you sort of see? So you can use attachment. But if it's an obsessive, absurd state of mind, it can only harm anybody, and it's got nothing to do with virtue. Do you see my point? We've got to distinguish between a virtue and a non-virtue. And necessarily all the delusions are neurotic. And the good sign of them is you're distressed and unhappy. If it's causing you distress and unhappiness, it's a delusion. If it's causing you to be happy and open and spacious and brave, it's a virtue. You understand my point?
Yes.
So there's a state of mind called devotion. Whether that's devotion to your music teacher whom you really revere, that could be a really solid, it's a really excellent quality. It's more than loving a friend. Like you can have a friend whom you say you love, that means you want them to be happy. You have a person to have compassion for, you want them not to suffer. But there's another state of mind, like I say, you're a great musician, you can revere your teacher, you can have your mentor, your teacher, you look up to them. That's not devotion. That's not the same as love and compassion. That's a good quality. Do you understand what I'm trying to say here? So we've got to see the difference, darling. What else? No questions?
I think you touched on that the intrinsic idea of self is based on fear.
Start again, the idea of self. Okay, based on fear. Yes, that's a very interesting point. Often people say when they hear Buddhist psychology, where is fear? Where does fear fit? You don't hear it being said, you hear attachment, anger, jealousy. When we think of fear as another distinct state of mind, but it's very fascinating that the Buddhist view is all the delusions, starting with ego grasping, the primordial one, and especially that one, but all the others that come from it, attachment, anger, and the rest, they are rooted in fear. Their flavour is fear. Their energy is fear. They are based on fear. And that's all because it's very hard to hear this, but they're delusional. So they're grasping onto things that don't exist, so it's kind of frantic. So all the delusions are the nature of fear, especially the root delusion. Now, in our culture, let's say you get attacked or really offended, then the sense of I rises up with great fear. Oh my God, I nearly got run over, and you're having a panic attack, your heart's beating fast, right? Or if you're really attacked by somebody. I think in our culture we call that, wasn't that Mr. Darwin who calls it instinct for survival or something? You with me? Isn't it some term, instinct for survival? Whatever that is. I thought that was Mr. Darwin. So he's observed the animals and observed humans. When bad things happen, we have the panic attack. And then, of course, we see that that's normal in everybody. So we assume it's a normal part of a normal mind. And we give it this function, which is to cause you to realise you get alert and you know what to do. Well, Buddha says, don't be stupid. You need intelligence to see what to do, not fear, because we assume it's so normal. So it's quite shocking to hear, as Lama Yeshe says in his Mahamudra book, and as Lama Zopa says when he talks about emptiness, when you realise emptiness, when you've cut the instinct of the neurotic I, you literally, there is no fear. You are a literally fearless person. Even, so that's why this lovely story about Lama Zopa. He's recognised as the reincarnation of his previous yogi up in the mountains, a Sherpa. He's a Sherpa. And he was a Nyingma yogi, Kunsang Yeshe, a great meditator. And a tantric yogi, which means he was a great practitioner, he completely controlled his death, he chose his new rebirth. This is exactly how they can, you know. So next life he was recognised as a little, first of all he was, his sister, when we go up there every year, we go up this trek up to Laudo, that's where Lama Zopa's cave is. This is the previous yogi, his name was, he was like where they stored the radishes, this old Lama, he moved into this, he pulled the radishes out and moved in, it became his cave. So he's known as the Radish Lama. So it's now Lama Zopa, he's the reincarnation. So when he was a little boy, we got there every year, up this trek up to Lama Zopa's cave, it raises money for the place up there, we do that every year. So this is an advertisement, by the way. We go up there every year, next year it'll be in October, when this is the third one we had in May this year. So anyway, it's way up in the mountains, 14,000, 4,500 metres up. And I'm supposed to do Lama Zopa's biography at some point. I mean, I better hurry, I'm going to be dead soon, but I'm trying my best. Meanwhile, I remember asking his sister, interviewing his sister about various things. She's old, nearly 18. And I remember she said, was a very little boy, he would act slightly differently. They didn't know who he was. He's a little boy born, his little brother. She was 6 or something. He always acts sort of, he'd sit on boxes, he'd act like, he always act a bit different and kind of, like high somehow. And so every time his mummy wandered off to do her job, little Zopa's gone. They find him always crawling up the mountain to where they know the cave of the previous Kunsang Yeshe, the Lama, who had died recently. Then he'd be crawling up there, and they'd always find him, they'd drag him home, and from the time he could walk and talk, he'd be walking up the hill, going back to the cave. And Mummy would say, come home, he'd say, no, that is my home. So he'd always talk about being the Laudo Lama. He talked about his benefactors from his past life. So Mummy figures, well, his behaviour was unusual, so she figured better check up with the local lamas. So they did their divinations and they announced that he was indeed the reincarnation of the previous Lama. So anyway, he was handed off to a monastery and they're given a manager. They're very professional, these people. So he tells a story that when he was 8 years old, was a place up above even Laudo, Roaling or something, some monastery. And he was about 8 at the time. It would have been about 1952 or something. Yeah, 52 or so, maybe around then. So in the monastery, in a big river, they're very strong rivers, the water's very strong up there, and there's this rickety bridge, and on the other side he sees these very strange looking people with straw-coloured hair, pale eyes, pale skin, white people, white people, and he wanted to meet them. I mean, all his students now are pale-coloured and straw-coloured hair, Well, not all of us, but some, whatever. So anyway, he wanted to go, and of course you don't go empty-handed, so he took his bowl of potatoes, and he was walking across this little bridge, and they're very rickety, and he fell in the water. Well, of course, they don't teach them swimming up there. So he's drowning. So this is how he told the story. So, okay, he said, oh, the head, he said. There's a very interesting, this is a good meaning, I'll talk about all this later. The head. Not my head, but the head kept coming to the surface for air. So you can see his manager having a panic attack running along the river, And then he said, the thought occurred to me that the person known as the Laudo Lama is about to die. And then he said to himself, I didn't know anything about emptiness, which meant in that life, he's 8 years old, he never had teachings on emptiness. But there was no fear. Now that's bizarre for us in our culture with our view of the mind. So the logic of this is, if he is who he was, which means a holy being from the past life, if he did have realization, which means for sure including realizing emptiness, in which he did control his dark death and choose his rebirth and stay in this is what they say, then it follows logically he would have realized emptiness, he would have cut the root of the ridiculous ignorance and all the other delusions. So quite literally, as he is drowning, you would have seen him come to the surface for air. We would have seen little boys struggling to breathe. But the shocking part for us is, and this is the point, there wouldn't have been any fear. His mind would have been peaceful. He was struggling for air, but we assume, because we're what ego grasping, and there's no option in our culture, Because we all have ego grasping. When we're being threatened, a car accident or being threatened or something like that, then massive fear arises. Well, that's ego grasping. That's a panic-stricken sense of I comes to the surface. So, of course, we assume you need that to know that you've got to survive. So our logic would be, well, if you didn't have ego, if you didn't have instinct for survival, you'd sink to the bottom of the river and go, oh, well, I'm drowning, it doesn't matter. No. You don't need fear to let you know that you're drowning. You need common sense, you know. So he kind of knows he's drowning. It's probably reasonable to want to come to the surface of the air, but it wouldn't have been fear driving him. This is very bizarre for our culture, but this is exactly Buddha's point. This fits with Buddha's view. When you cut the fantasy, the belief in the fantasy I, which brings all the other rubbish, which are in the nature of fear, then you have literally cut fear. I mean, in other words, your mind's blissful. So even though you would have seen a little boy rushing to the surface for air, he would have been clear, his mind would have been clear, as if he'd walking along the street relaxed. But he would have been on the alert, seeing what's going on, but he wouldn't have been panic, fear, or drama. This is kind of intense to think about, that for sure. So then we've all got that fear. So we might be, as long as you're getting what you want, as long as the attachment's getting what it wants, you understand? More relaxed and comfy and easy going. But the second you hear that lousy sound, and not to mention getting threatened, then of course the I rises, attachment to what I want, anger what I want, what I want, jealousy, all the dramas come. That's the stuff of the delusions, and they're all in the nature of fear. And that's why we suffer. The Buddha says we need beyond fear. It's kind of outrageous as a concept, psychologically, isn't it? You with me?
I am.
Okay.
But when we talk about nihilism, especially
Yeah.
talk about emptiness and that example, where he's going, how do we avoid nihilism?
Okay, well, when we get to emptiness, we'll talk about that. It's going to be a big discussion. Can you wait?
Yes.
Probably till tomorrow. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, we'll get there. It's a perfect question. That's the major danger. The biggest danger is going to nihilism. The biggest one. That's why when we do talk about it, we'll talk about it in the framework of the way Tsongkhapa talks, in terms of the two truths, understanding dependent arising and emptiness together. It's a really guaranteed way you can never fall into the abyss of the great mistake, which is nihilism, as Tsongkhapa says. It's the commonest mistake we make. And it's a really powerful point and very necessary to understand the teachings really well. We'll go into it, okay? We're sort of leading up to it. All this is leading us to it, okay? What else, people? Yes? Who are you? No.
I was labelled Tony.
You're the person known as Tony.
Yes.
I'm happy to meet you, Tony.
I would like to know, is it your mind, like you've been doing this for so long, for many years, is it your mind that's holding the conception of everything we're talking about, or the brain that's holding it?
Okay, it's a really good simple question, Tony. The way the Buddhists would say it is it's your mind, your cognition, your consciousness, and we'll talk more of it. The brain is a part of our physical, the way Buddhists would put it, it's a part of our physical makeup. And I would put it this way, simply speaking, I think, that what goes on in the brain is like a physical indicator of what arises in your mind, your consciousness. Even as a concept, does that make sense? In other words, your mind is your thoughts and your feelings and your emotions, and every time they arise, then the brain is triggered, or things happen in the brain. They're very intimately connected, but technically they're separate phenomena for the Buddhist view. Is that good enough for now?
Yes.
Will that do?
And that's in here,
Huh?
the mind.
Well, the way the Tibetan's point is to here. But the mind, it's just so weird for us. Your consciousness, like I talked before, I mentioned very briefly in this more esoteric model of the way we're made, which is the basis of the Tibetan medical system. You heard me say that before, remember? You were here this morning, weren't you? Yeah, so this consciousness of ours, all our thoughts and everything, are coursing through this subtle nervous system of 72,000 subtle channels, inextricably linked with this subtle wind energy. It's a very, very, very different model, completely different. So that's all our thoughts and feelings and emotions. It sounds weird to us because we're so used to thinking of it as a thing in the skull. So what I'd say, the best way to put it, like I said, is that what goes on in the physical body, the physical brain, and indeed the rest of our body, is an indicator of what's happening in your mind. So that's why exactly you say when the heart beats faster, when the I rises, the panic and fear rises, that's your mind. But because of its intimate relationship with the physical body, it triggers the heart to go faster. It triggers the brain to go buzz, buzz, buzz. You see what I'm saying? So the Buddhist view has got to get used to this concept. Your consciousness isn't the physical body, but they're inextricably and intimately connected at the grosser level. So we have in subtle levels of mind. When you're a great meditator and you've gone beyond the gross level, then you look like you were dead. but it's your subtle consciousness, and that doesn't need the brain at all. And that's why we don't posit such a level of consciousness in our culture, because we only posit what goes on with the brain. You see my point? And that's why these days, all these discussions with the Dalai Lama and all the scientists, they're really listening to this stuff now, because I mean, he's so articulate and this body of knowledge is so amazing, and it's opened the door for Western scientists to really look into it. And I remember reading one book about death and things that happen, like there's all the reports of people having out-of-body experiences, coming back coming back to life after supposedly being dead, and especially in the business of taking organs. I remember one doctor was quoted as saying, I can say now with certainty that consciousness is not a function of the brain. I don't know what it is, but I can say that much. So it's good that people are discussing these things, it's really great. Do you understand?
Yeah, so, sorry.
Yeah.
So did Buddha become enlightened, leave the earth, see what he saw in nirvana, then come back?
No, not like that. Not like that. Thank you, Tony, that's good. Not like that. So there's two different goals in Buddhism. If you just put it this way, if you do the wisdom wing, you do all the work we're describing already now. You control your body and speech, you live in vows of ethics, you then go to high school or to the next level. We're going to talk about that. We are talking about it, the mind. You're going to get single point of concentration, you get shamatha, you go deep into your mind, you cut all the rubbish out, basically you get rid of all the rubbish, you realise emptiness, you achieve your own liberation, and when you die in that life, you're gone, you don't bother coming back. Your mind's in a subtle state of bliss. You with me? Speaking simply. So, if you're on the Mahayana path, you won't hang around there. If you only want to get to that, that's the liberation. That's the Theravada teachings. You understand? You go all the way there. There's so many teachings in Buddhism in the different countries, they teach differently. That's all Buddhist teachings. Some people say, the Theravada especially would say, you can only achieve that. Most humans can only achieve the liberation of this first one. Get out of samsara. Quit coming back. But the Mahayana says we can also all become a Buddha. That means even though you don't even need to come back, because you have such compassion for others now, you will happily choose to come back, live like a regular Joe, and practice the Bodhisattva path, and continue to develop your quality so you can help others. But you don't need to be having a birth. You don't need to. You've gone beyond. So he doesn't go away and come back. You just continue to go. Keep going, and then you can manifest in many bodies, and you help many sentient beings in different realms of existence as a Buddha.
Did you say the last part?
Go, Tony, what?
Part where you just that last part.
Say it again. So you want to say it again?
I can't. Yeah, can you?
Do you want me to say it again?
Yes,
No,
that last part.
Oh, that's the last bit. Okay. I'll just repeat again for the sake of it. If you're on the wisdom wing, I put it that way, the first two scopes of practice which we're talking about now, you live according to the vows of morality, you stop harming, you stop creating the causes for lower realm suffering, then you go to the next level of practice, you start to get shamatha, you get concentration, you go deep into your mind, you unpack all the delusions, you get rid of them, you realise emptiness, you perfect that realisation in one life or other, you've finished your job, you've achieved your own nirvana, you've achieved your liberation from suffering. At the end of that life, you don't have to come back, you stay in a state of bliss. Do you understand? You're in a subtle state of bliss. Then, that's what, if you only go to that goal, then you're finished. You don't have to come back. But if you're on the Mahayana path, you don't just stay in bliss, because you're also motivated by compassion, even though if you don't need to come back, you want to come back in a human form to help others. And that's what the thing about reincarnation, these yogis, Lama Zopa would have been at the point where he didn't need to come back, but out of compassion, he wants to come back, so they choose their rebirths and keep on bopping on the Bodhisattva path. Do you understand? And then when you become a Buddha, you only want to benefit others, so you keep bopping around, manifesting in different bodies to benefit sentient beings.
So that means if God is one of us.
That's what happened?
If Buddha was one of us. In the text that Buddha must be here on earth.
Oh yeah, must be many, all the time, must be continuously manifesting in different forms. You might recognise them, but absolutely, a Buddha has no choice but to continue to manifest in all forms as long as there's suffering. There's no way they're going to choose otherwise. That's right.
But why in a human body?
What?
Why do we suffer?
They're also in other bodies as well,
Oh, yeah.
to help sentient beings. But the human one, because we've at least got some access to some intelligence and some virtue, that's our saving grace. And it's the human is the best of a bad lot, basically. It's when we at least do something with it, hopefully access our intelligence and virtue. I mean, look at the human world, it doesn't look so easy. But at least as a human, we've got that capability. Does that make sense? Good. Thank you, Tony. Yes, sweetheart.
How do you, with all the terrible deeds people who are doing
Start again, darling.
in the world, human beings who are doing terrible things
That's right.
because of delusion,
That's right. And habit, past negative karma habit.
how would it be best to deal with coming across people like that? Do you just let them continue?
I understand. That's the compassion wing.
Yes.
That's a compassion mean. Can we do that tomorrow?
Yeah.
Can you wait? Emptiness and compassion will come tomorrow. Okay. And the next day. Okay. So we're in junior school right now and high school, dealing with karma and delusions, and this is exclusively how to put ourselves together.
Yeah, I was just sort of, we were talking about deluded mind and
Yep.
trying to
Of
help
course.
those people.
Absolutely, darling. But we'll talk, if we can look at it first for ourselves and understand how they work, then we can help other people with it.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so let's carry on. Rubbing our noses in all these ugly delusions. So the 3 toxic emotions, okay? So where were we before we got to? We're just looking at, basically we're looking at before at the 10, the very first entry-level junior school grade 1 instructions from the Buddha, his advice. He exhorts us to refrain from the 3 of the body, at least don't kill, don't jump on the wrong partner, and don't take the ungiven. 4 of the speech, at least don't lie, badmouth people, abusive speech, rabbit on about nothing, or talk people behind their backs and create disharmony. 7 of the body and speech. Then the 3 of the mind at least begin to harness the grosser, heavier levels of the 3 toxic emotions. At least control fundamentalism and narrow-mindedness and stubborn-minded, really kind of harmful ignorance. At least control heavy-duty wanting others to suffer, which is the gross level of anger. And at least control really intense craving, like, eating too much food, too much alcohol, too much sex, whatever, all the actions of the senses, driven by intense attachment. Why? Not because he's trying to make us miserable, it's because they cause us suffering, because they're driven by these delusions. So this is the 10 little instructions. Starting point. But another way to formalise all that is in understanding the way karma works, this law of karma, this natural law that runs the universe, that no one in turn runs, because it's a natural law. And that's, again, something really massive we have to hear about. But we're so used to the concept in religion, of course, as God's law. And it's reasonable. If there is a creator, there is God's law. And when you break God's law, that's doing what God said not to do, and that's a sin. And then you must be forgiven. That's the concept. That's the philosophy. That's not Buddha's philosophy. There's no equivalent of God's law in Buddhism. There's no equivalent of Buddha's law. Meaning, there is, in the sense of conventional set of rules, like for monks and nuns, when you're living together, you don't do this, you don't do that, and that's kind of conventional behaviour things that you have if you live in the same household. But they talk about natural negativities. So natural negativities for the Buddha are like heavy-duty ones that harm others, killing, stealing, lying. They are not God's law. They're not Buddha's law. He hasn't created those. He hasn't made those things you must do. He's observed with his mind that they are the actions that harm sentient beings, and by our doing them, we harm ourselves in the future. So the basis for refraining from these is not because he says so, but is because they will harm us. So that's what, so that's, again, there's no concept of God's law. This is, for the Buddha, it is natural law. Now, we think natural law is the exclusive, area of what we call science. Well, Buddha is always only talking about natural law. So it's kind of shocking for us, because we assume natural law means gravity, mathematics, that we invented recently, we white people, or something. You understand? No, karma is natural law for the Buddha. It was a shock to us because it assumes a state of mind that's more subtle, that doesn't depend upon a brain, so we call that religion. So we think it's all made up, so we've got to hear it like this. It's natural law, the Buddha says. He, like Einstein, has observed the universe, except he's able to access his more subtle mind that can cognise more subtle phenomena. Than the grosser level of mind, that's the difference. But it's the same principle, it's natural law. Karma runs the universe. The law of karma is the law in which all beings exist. Like, botany isn't somebody there's no Mr. Botany pulling the strings. We've labelled the laws that govern gardens and growing things as the natural law called botany. Clever people have articulated it. Well, the same with karma. Buddha didn't make it up, he's articulated it. He's presented this natural law that he's observed, that's the law that minds exist within. So it's way more subtle. And the essence of the law is, in general, everything we think and do and say leaves seeds in the mind that ripens as our future experiences. More specifically, everything that we do that's called negative, which is an action but motivated by a delusion, sows seeds in our mind that ripens as future suffering. And everything we do that's motivated by a virtue will ripen as future happiness. That's the fundamental. So on the basis of that, we then learn those laws and attempt to use them to protect ourselves from suffering. First one, this is first level, ourselves. Protect us from suffering. I'm sick of suffering. So I won't kill, I won't lie, I won't steal, I won't badmouth. Why? Because I don't want future suffering. That's the logic. So, let's break down an action, where action means karma. When you do it, what is it that determines the action you do, whether it's called virtuous or non-virtuous? Because there's only two options. There's a third option, neutral, forget them. An action we do is either negative or positive. That's it. And there are variations of these. It's very clear, you know. So if it's so, we want to be able to learn to know what is it that defines an action as being negative, which means it leaves a seed in the mind of a ripen as suffering, which I don't want, and what is it that determines an action as positive, which I do want. It's very logical. So what is it that determines an action as negative? Well, there's four things in place. In order, when we do an action, they call a complete action, which would be one such that it would leave a seed in our main bank vault, if you like, that will then be the seeds that will be triggered at the time of our death, which determine the type of rebirth we've got. So in our case, for example, we can deduce logically from the Buddhist perspective that a virtuous karmic seed of our strong, intentional, non-killing, probably, as Amazoba says, kept in the practice in the context of keeping vows of non-killing, which I want to talk about, in a past life, such that when we died, we must have been fairly peaceful at the right time before we stopped breathing. One of these virtuous karmic seed was triggered, which in our case programmed us to go to our new mummy's human womb when the conditions came together. Usually it's when daddy hops into bed, or another new day. Now these days it's petri dishes and things, isn't it? So if we had assumed we had an old-fashioned conception, mummy and daddy were involved. So, what was the cause? How do you what would have been that action? How do you break it down? What makes it positive? Again, this is a crucial difference. A positive action for Christians is what God said is positive. God has to judge you as good. Then you're good. And that's our view in the world. In my mummy's household, if I do what mummy says, I'd be very disappointed that she doesn't reward me. I want to be pointed out to be a good girl, and mummy says thank you and I feel good. Now that's reasonable behaviour for all of us to be kind to each other, but that's our view of morality. And of course if I do naughty things, I don't want mummy to find out. That's the way we are, you know, but this is not the Buddha's view. It's a natural law. There's no judging and rewarding, it's absurd. So what is it? So what would have been the conditions of the action that we must have done that sowed a seed in our bank and dropped into our bank vault, that then was the one that was triggered that caused us to just get this human body, and not just that, but the human life that we've got now? Well, they must have, at least just to have a decent, strong, get a decent, good human body, there have to be four things in place. When we did that action of would have been non-killing, in particular, in general, non-harming. The opposite of those 10 is what virtuous actions are at this basic level. This is called the virtue of refraining from harming. In the more advanced level, in the Bodhisattva path, we are practicing the virtue of actively benefiting. That's a more advanced level. Here, we're practicing the virtue of refraining from harming. That's pretty potent already. So, the action we must have done would have been non-killing. So, when we did that action, there would have been four things in place. A complete action. So there would have to have been a living being. Let's say a mouse. One is the object, a living mouse in our kitchen. Two, there have to have been our mind involved in the doing of this action of not killing the mouse. So it's a very proactive part, not just merely not killing. The mind must be involved with it. And this is the crucial point about karma. The word intention, which is merely I will. Intention, not motivation, but intention is volition. I will. That's the starting point of all karma. So there has to have been, in the second point here of these four, 2A would have been intention. And then you would have seen the mouse and you would go, oh, I must not kill the mouse, be careful, I must not kill the mouse. Something like that. But the crucial second piece, 2B in the number 2 point, the crucial piece would have been your motivation, your reason for not killing, and it would have to have been a virtuous one, compassion, for example. Because that compassion is what colours the whole action and turns it into a virtuous action, such that a virtuous karmic seed is planted in your bank vault. It's very precise, you know. The third one is you do the action. You catch the mouse. And 4, you release the mouse out the door or whatever. Thank you, Robina. Bye. Happy mouse. There's a complete action of non-killing. 4 things in place. Object, mind involved, action, result. There's more to it than that. It's just a simple example, a simple way of presenting. So every action we do is one of those with all the four, including all the negative actions. They're complete actions and they go into their bank vaults. So if a negative action like that is triggered at the time of death, that'll send us to the lower realms. We'll get up in a lion birth, dog birth, hell birth, spirit birth, whatever. Depending on the intensity of it, the frequency of it, the depth of it, many, many conditions. The virtuous ones will bring at least a human birth at least, for example. So, then there are other ways. So then that's the four, just to determine to get a human body, a human birth. Well, Mother Teresa had one of those and so does Hitler. So where's the difference? So they both have that karma. There's trillions of karmic seeds. There's, if you like, there are like 4 kinds of bank vaults. First lot is the main seed. This is called the main seed of a complete action of non-killing, as we just described, with 4 points. And that brings the fully ripened result, in this case, of our case, and indeed with Hitler's case and Mother Teresa's, of getting a human mummy. They've got a human body. That's just the first one. Now, the second one is where the differences are. That's the tendencies in the minds of Hitler, in the minds of Mother Teresa, and in our mind. That's the differences. Your tendencies, and that is a bunch of habits. What's in your mind is a bunch of habits, and you get born with these, and we've got programmed with these from the first second of conception, and these are already triggered even before we stop breathing at the time of the past death, at the same time as the main seed. So the main seed, for our case, to get a human mummy. Then the second track, the second bank volume, like of karmic seeds, will be the one that will produce all our personality traits. When you're good at music, or murdering, or killing, or loving, or kind, or horticulture, whatever, your entire set of tendencies that already is providing you with a personality. It is really clear from the Buddhist point that you don't get these tendencies from mummy and daddy. You get genes from mummy and daddy. You get a brain from mummy and daddy. No problem. So in other words, as my mummy, for example, my mum was a musician, and she saw a little Bobsy, and she recognised that little Bobsy was good at music as well. So the natural logic in our world is we've got good music from mummy. No, the Buddha says, what happened is this. My mummy got into this life with one of her tendencies to be good at music, which she practised. When little Bobsy came along and got born into her womb, and she also had a tendency to be good at music because she had practised before. So we come together, and because I've got the tendency to play music, she sees it and she nourishes it. She didn't give me music. That's the crucial difference. Let's say I had a tendency to lie. Let's say my mummy lied too. Then we'd go, oh, well, that's why Robina lies, because mummy also has lies, genes or something. No, mummy lies because she practiced lying before. I lie because I practiced lying before, and we happen to come together. But we can also see this, that you can have a psychopathic child born to a nice mummy. And then we go, oh, well, we don't understand that one. We get confused, you know. We just sort of throw our hands in the air and put it in the too hard basket. Isn't it? We do. It's true. I remember the Columbine kids. Remember the Columbine kids? I remember 20 years ago, the Columbine kids, there's 2 kids, you know, there's maniacs, poor suffering kids, when they slaughtered a whole bunch of people. And naturally, the first thing we'll do is it must be the parents. I remember reading in the New York Times a couple of years ago, it was the 20th anniversary, I think it maybe last year, and the mummy had written a memoir of one of them, and you could see the torture this poor woman went through. The marriage broke up. She was absolutely destroyed. People hated her, wanted to murder her, wanted to kill her because they were evil. They must have been the cause of these 2 monstrous boys. Because we've got to blame somebody. It was just, she was devastated. Of course, buying all this herself, it was just, she was destroyed with guilt and shame and grief and loss. What did I do wrong? What should I have done? Well, from the Buddhist point of view, you know, and the first thing people did was analyse the parents. But they tried to be nice, white, Christian people. They didn't see what the crazy kid was doing. They didn't produce this child's mania. They gave him a body, that strong karmic connection with this person. But these 2 kids, they have their own stuff. So we can't work that one out, you know. Just doesn't make sense. There has to be something wrong. They even, and a friend of mine who was in Denver, where it was it happened, she said the Justice Department, the one her boy was part of it, and they didn't make it public, they even went and dug up their brains. They were determined to find the cause. They couldn't find anything. I'm not being rude. It's our culture. It's how we are. It's what we think, you know. So then I read about one little 6-year-old boy who kind of shot his sister. He was black, poor, daddy's in prison. Oh, tick all the boxes. That makes sense. It fits our view, you know. So our tendencies were triggered before we stopped breathing in the past life. What from? Trillions of habits stored in our little bank vault. So the second way karma ripens is called intentions or actions similar to the cause, the tendency to keep killing, keep lying, keep loving, keep being kind, etc. Already programmed right there, and then in our life we just act them out. Third lot, triggered before we stop breathing, was what's, as I said, what we call our experiences similar to the cause. As I said, we're very social beings. We've lived our entire lives in reference to sentient beings, and we can divide them very simply into two categories. People who've been mean to us and people who've been kind to us. Think of your life. It's so simple, it's embarrassing. So the ones who've been mean to us, karmic connection. People kill you, people lie to you, people steal from you, you've done those actions before, and karma's pretty personal. So there's your mummy or daddy, you know. I mean, these days, most families have like 3 mothers and 5 fathers, I've noticed. When I was a kid, a Catholic, I didn't even meet a divorced person. So we had 1 mummy and 1 daddy, you know. Now people have 4 daddies, 3 mummies, extra sisters. I mean, it's like complex. So people, in other words, children are always being rejected by their families. Must be something to watch their children around, blaming their mummy and daddy because their mummy and daddy got married to someone else and left them. Isn't it? You hear that all the time. Well, we've got more deluded karma, must be more deluded, must be. One of the reasons people leave you, one of the logical reasons, Buddhist view, karma, of why relationships end, why people leave you, why relationships break up, whether it's parents or sexual ones, or brothers and sisters or friends, is because of sexual misconduct, cheating on people, going behind backs, lying and cheating on people in relationships. So relationships end. So we must have a lot of that karma. All of us, if mummy and daddy left us. Mummy and daddy mean to us or kind to us, that's another discussion. If they leave us, you know, that's a particular one, relationships ending. It's very painful for us. People call it abandonment. We have it very strong in our culture, isn't it? So mummy's kind to us, it's because of past virtue. And mummy's unkind to us because of past non-virtue. Whatever actions, because it's not just generalised, it's specific. Like each plant in the ground has its own seed, its own causes. Each action that arises and occurs to us has its own cause. Each one, its own cause, each one. So mummy might be very patient, but she might lie to us. Daddy might be very impatient, but always tell the truth. There's many different things, you know. And we can see, all of us, that there's a mixture of things. Not just what we do, because we've got delusions. We paint the person with the one brush, you know. Never forgive your father as long as he lived. You never forgive your mummy as long as she was, because she did one bad action. We all do that. That's called delusions. We exaggerate, you know. This is called experiences similar to the cause. So when you have this view, and so Tibetans, for example, this is the worldview they've had since the 7th century, and that came from India 1,000 years before that. This view, this vast body of knowledge about this view about karma, this law that runs the universe, it's hugely prevalent in India and the Tibetans, the Buddhists. So they were brought up with this view, in the same way they were brought up with the default mode I'm made by mummy. Do you understand? So that informs each of the ways we look at how we behave in our world. That's informed by the views we have in our mind. So the Tibetans, there's a friend of mine called Jigdro. He was born in 1970. In 87, he was 17, and there was the first mini uprising against the Tibetans, against the Chinese communists, you know, since 1959. And it was the young monks and nuns who were the radicals, who were the demonstrators. It was very interesting. So when we think of demonstrating, we think of anger. So he was demonstrating, and he got arrested, he got tortured, and he released, and he demonstrated again, and his friend had his head blown off, so he thought he'd better escape, so he came to Nepal, to Kopan Monastery. This is like 30 years ago. And then, 30 years ago. So then, since that time, his father got murdered, brother got murdered, he was telling me about it, and he was sad, tears were there. And I said to him very casually, I said, Jigdro, do you ever get angry? And he laughed. Angry what for, Robina? It's our own fault. That's a shocking concept to us, isn't it? Sounds so loaded. But what he meant in the most casual way, because it's in the bones of his being, it's taken as a given, is karma, you know, meaning not the way we say it so cliche, oh, it's karma. They understand it properly. It means so when you have the view of karma, this is my point now, when you have the view of karma and you're really living up with it, and that takes time if you choose to, but he's brought up with it, it's just a natural law for him, then this is what's so powerful. The Dalai Lama said he's really sad that more and more Tibetans are showing that they're showing anger now. They never used to have much anger. Now you listen to this, it's so logical. So he wasn't angry. He wasn't angry. That is very shocking for us. But let's analyse, now we're looking at these delusions in a more deep way, let's analyse anger. If everything we say with our mouth is coming from a thought, and all thoughts are conceptual stories, they're assumptions, then what do you think anger is? Listen to anger. How dare you do that to me? I don't deserve it. Is that not the philosophy of anger? It's so crystal clear. So what is that philosophy coming from? It's coming from the view that I didn't ask to get born. It isn't my fault. It's not, someone did this to me. Mummy made me. Daddy made me. They did this to me. That's the view, the dualistic view that we believe in, that I was made by someone else. I got plonked in this earth. They did not consult me, and then they do things to me. And so if that's true, I don't deserve it. And anger is a correct response. But the Buddhists don't have that. Jidol didn't have that. He knew why it was happening. Because of past karma. So he takes it as a given, but it doesn't mean he sits back and accepts it like one is otherwise will drown. No. Because what the Chinese communists are doing is not correct. He knows why they're doing it. They must have caused the suffering 47 lives ago. But it's not correct. Now it's still conventionally not right. Because Tibet doesn't belong to China. So they demonstrated. There's no contradiction. So we have a nihilistic view that if you created the karma for bad things to happen, we just assume, hit me again, it's all my fault. That's nihilism. That's a completely mistaken view about karma. In other words, the view of karma is like botany. Botany explains why it was a weed. Now, if you don't know botany, you're going to say, who put a weed in my garden? I don't deserve weeds. That is a nutty idea. The assumption, listen to it, the assumption is that it's not my garden, that someone else did it. Look at this, they gave me weeds, how dare they? That's very weird. We know a garden is my garden, and that implies what's in it, I put it there. That's karma. Completely different viewpoint. You don't go, how dare there are no dollars in my bank? I deserve dollars. Why do you not say that? Because you know it's my bank account, and what's in it is what I put there or didn't put there. So you own it. So you might get angry with yourself. But this dualistic view of blame comes from the belief that you didn't ask to get born, which is what we believe. And it's reinforced by our neuroscientific views. With respect to us. So of course we get angry. Look at the world. We're driven by anger. Rage, how dare that happen? And that's why we have such anger when we see other people suffering. Did you know I wasn't angry? He laughed. But he knew why it happened, so he got up there and bravely demonstrated to help change it. The same thing. I always quote this story. 2003, Richard Gere invited Dalai Lama to New York. And I was doing the prison project at the time, and he invited some 20 former prisoners, all of whom had done some kind of meditation in prison. Bunch of black, white, male, female, cross-section of Americans, and some people I knew from prison, and then people like me who worked with people in prison. We were invited as well. So we had a lovely talk all day. Dalai Lama, they met the Dalai Lama. It was a lovely day. So he also invited 2 young Tibetan nuns. It was a perfect example. They were telling their suffering, sexually abused, tortured for a couple of years. Now, probably the Americans, if you want to quantify suffering, probably thought they had probably worse suffering than everybody else has put together. But what was clearly evident to the Americans, to us, people like us, they were not angry. We don't get this. We think we're suppressing, No. They have the view of karma. It doesn't even arise. Anger does not arise in the mind of a person as a law of cause and effect and karma. This is logic. Yeah, because anger says, why does this happen to me? I don't deserve it. You don't have that view if you have the view of karma. It's kind of powerful. So they were telling their story, and they had too, tears. And then they said, and of course, we had compassion for our torturers, because we knew we must have harmed them in the past, and we know that they will suffer because of their karma. So that's the basis of real compassion. That's why we've got to do the wisdom first. That informs our real powerful compassion, because we're all in the same boat. All suffering. So and this is the point, once we hear this about suffering, we turn it over, and this is exactly the same logic for happiness. But this is a big shock to us, and this is showing the hubris of attachment. We never, ever question, why do good things happen to me? Do we? We don't agonize, why do good things happen to me? I don't deserve it. And why? This is pointing to attachment. Attachment at the deeper level is an assumption that I deserve the good. No logic to it. Because we didn't ask to get born, remember? We don't care. We just deserve good things. But this is a complete mistake, Buddha says. You can't say you deserve dollars if you haven't earned them. You can't say you don't deserve weeds if you planted them. That's the ownership part is so powerful. When you can own the garden, you won't get angry and think someone else put the weeds there. When you own the bank account, you won't think, why doesn't someone put dollars in my bank? That's demented because you own it as yours. That's the view of karma. Of course it takes time. It's not our view at all. It's what takes time for us. It really takes time. So attachment is this powerful assumption, like an arrogant, self-centered sense of entitlement. I deserve good. Give me more. It's greedy. I mean, it sounds very shocking to talk this way, but that's what attachment is. Greedy, grasping, entitled. So give me more, please. I deserve it. Well, I'm sorry, if you haven't created the cause, you don't. I mean, Buddha doesn't talk deserve. That's our heavy-duty word. So attachment is the result of ego grasping, which is a made-up nonsense of a fantasy I, which produces all these ridiculous delusions and produces all these nonsense philosophical views. So to deconstruct them, smash them, put atomic bombs under them, because they're not valid, Buddha says. They cause suffering, and they're wrong views, they're misconceptions, they're fantasies, they're made-up nonsense. We have made them up. So by even abiding by the laws of karma and internalizing it, already can radically change your mind. Before you even begin to work on your mind. It's all junior school. Already it brings peace, clarity, acceptance, understanding, more stable, more content, more in charge of your life, before you even begin to work on your mind. Now you can go to high school and really get to the root of the problem and start to unpack and unravel the ridiculous delusions. Let's see how they're nonsense. But this just takes time. So, 4 things in place when we do an action. Back to karma. The second one, the mind involved in the action. So when there is intention to not kill, motivated by compassion, that's what makes the whole action virtuous. It drops a virtuous karmic seed, and it will ripen in the future as human birth, tendency to not kill, not getting killed, and a pleasant environment. Every action of every positive and every negative of all have their own results. No one has to judge it or reward it or punish. It's a natural law. So if you want to have a beautiful garden, learn botany. If you want to have a good life, learn Buddha's botany and apply it. That's the approach. That's practice. But the crucial point here is the mind. Now, let's say Tony has a mouse in his kitchen. Let's say Tony has a mouse. So there's the object.
Where's Andrew?
What? Andrew left. What happened to Andrew? Is he gone? Is Andrew there? Is he gone? What happened to him?
Having a nap.
Having a nap? Oh, Andrew. Okay, so I've got Tony now. So Tony's got a mouse in his kitchen. Number 1, object, mouse, living mouse. Goodbye. Whoever that is. Who's that? Okay. So 2, the mind involved in this action. Intention, intention to save the mouse? No. He doesn't have it because he doesn't see the mouse. 2, motivation, can't be. He doesn't see the mouse. So the mind involved is completely missing. 3, he stumbles, but the mouse just escapes in time. 4, happy mouse. So a mouse didn't get killed. But he has no virtuous karma whatsoever because there was no intention and no motivation. It's so obvious. Can you see my point? The mind is what creates karma. The mind drives everything. The mind is the boss. The mind runs the show. If you want a creator, your mind is the creator. And if you want a creator, intention is the creator. Intention, I will. Everything exists on the tip of the wish. That's what Buddha says. Mama's over quotes. And the thing is that that's happening a million times a second, but we're not noticing because we're all just programmed with instinct. We don't even notice what our mind's doing, That's why we have to unpack and unravel our mind. Unpack it, really seriously unpack it. To be in charge of the process, you understand? So, we're saying, let's say, for example, Tony's got a mouse and he does intend to save the mouse. What's that? Tony? Yeah.
Andrew is back.
Oh, yeah, he's back. So yes, Tony, what happened?
Andrew is back.
Oh, that's okay. I'll keep using you. So, yeah. So let's just say Tony, the same example. There is a mouse. He has the intention not to kill it. His motivation is so compassionate, but he stumbles and he kills the mouse by accident. Do you understand? That can happen, can't it? So he plans to not kill it, but he kills it. But you cannot say he creates the karma of killing. You can't. He did kill the mouse. There's some imprint there, but you cannot say there's much of non-virtue. There can't be, because his intention, I want to save the mouse, and his reason was such compassion. So that's, you see, the mind is the boss. When you know the mind is the boss, whatever the mind is doing colours everything, because the mind's the boss. He didn't mean to kill the mouse. So you can't, if he then goes, oh well, screw the mouse, who cares, hope it suffers, then okay, that's heavy. Do you understand? So it's so intricate, because every action, you can have the same person in the same environment, but there's so many conditions, and whether it's habit, whether it's not habit, there's so many things that determine the character of the karma we create. What we do is start with the simple principles, you know. It's the same with a negative action. Let's say Tony's got a mouse. Intention, I will kill that mouse. Why? I can't stand mouse. How disgusting in my kitchen. Anger. Very simple. 3, he goes stomp, but the mouse gets away. Well, even though the mouse it's not a complete action, it won't drop into his main bank vault, but what he did was strongly put seeds into his habit to keep killing, and indeed even probably get the result of being killed. But he won't have the result of a lower realm from that, because it's not a complete action. So everything you do with your mind, everything you do with your body, everything you do with your speech, does leave imprints. But a complete action would have all 4, you know. The object, the intention and motivation, the action and the result. And it's so nuanced, there's so many variations of it. But the crucial piece to get is the function of the mind in the actions we do. The motivation, in other words. That gives the character to the action. So even a good action, like, you know, you can argue that generosity is a virtuous action. Stealing is a non-virtuous action, as I say. So there's generosity. Let's say Tony's rich. And I want his money. So of course I'm going to act nice. He'll think I like him. That's what attachment is. It's so wicked. Attachment just wants to, you know, get his money or get into his pants or something, where we act nice. It's not as mean as rape if you're going to be sexual, but it's kind of, we seduce people to think we're lovely people. This one will get something from them. Attachment is very brutal, you know. Attachment is very self-centered. Just wants to get what it wants. So it's convenient to act nice, and the person will give it to you, won't they? I don't have to hold him up. I'll just be nice to him. I think I like him. So give me whatever I want. Well, my motivation stinks, you know. I might say he needs money for the taxi. Oh, here, darling, have my $20. Oh, I think how kind Robina is. No! My motivation is lousy. That's not a virtuous action. How can it be? Or on the other hand, say Tony's a homeless person. I'm walking down the street and I pass a homeless person. I'm even thinking to myself, I'm not giving that smelly person any money, but $20 falls out of my pocket. He gets the $20. I don't get any virtuous karma. I get non-virtuous karma because I didn't want to give him anything. There's no virtue in that. How can there be? I didn't give him any money. It fell out of my pocket. So everything is dependent on the mind, you know. So obvious in a way. The mind's the boss. It's not whether you're seen to do it, not whether someone else thinks you do it. No. And it is our trouble. We don't need to have volition about what we're doing. Karma takes care, as long as he says, you know. You don't have to know that fire burns you for it to burn you. It is a natural law. Get your finger in the fire, it'll burn you, baby. Karma's like that. It's a natural law. Karma takes care. As long as he says, you know. Good or bad. So we better learn the law, babies, and be in charge of it, is the point. Yeah. Yeah.
So what does it mean by mind over matter?
I mean, we say that, don't we? That just means with a mind that's strong enough, you can overcome pain, you can overcome problems. It's a very good saying, isn't it? I haven't thought about it for years. It's a very powerful saying. That means we can change our minds. I think Buddha would agree. That when your mind is strong enough, I mean, my friends in prison living in these garbage dumps, they're happy guys because they've changed their mind. So mind over matter. It's a very powerful statement. Thank you for reminding me. I never thought of it for years. You see what I'm saying, Tony? That's eventually what Buddha's saying. Yeah. Yes, darling.
Just back to the mice story.
The mice, yeah. Yeah.
But I experienced myself with the spider.
Yes.
But I didn't mean to save the spider. I was scared of the spider. But I didn't want to kill it. I just want to get it out.
I understand. So what
I
happened?
used the glass to cover
Yes,
it.
exactly.
But I underestimated the size, so I shot the spider and killed it by
I understand that. So the question?
So I create bad karma.
No, the same as I said before. Remember Tony? The same example.
So because I didn't intend.
You didn't intend to kill, and you were. Did you have anger towards the spider?
No.
Okay, so you didn't intend to kill, but because you were fearful. See, fear is also a delusion. Fear is part of delusion, so it wasn't totally virtuous. Your fear, you're mainly thinking about yourself, but luckily you didn't want to harm the spider. But maybe you could argue if you had no fear, you would have been more kind and more gentle. So then there's some learning from that, but you didn't create much. But you should take responsibility and think, okay, let's do my fear, my delusion, and I'm really sorry, and we purify. We'll talk about purification later. So absolutely. So we do lots of things we don't mean to, but we should also purify them. It's very important, isn't it?
Yeah, but continue from that. A couple of months after that, a spider, not the same one, is dead. A new one got into my fish tank and drowned. And I saw it in time, so I saved him and got him out. And
Well done, sir. That's good.
I'll give him a chance to do it.
Good, well done. Exactly. That's very. So saving the life of a creature, that's a very powerful virtuous motivation, a very powerful virtuous action. Well done. That's good. Oh. Yeah.
Just going back a little bit, my mother is doing a DNA sample, or she's done one to have her, for me to do her family tree.
Oh, okay.
Is that a complete waste of time?
No, I mean, people like it, you know, it's okay.
It's not real, is it?
No, I mean, it's true. No, I understand.
Her maternal grandmother, for instance, is not real.
No, I mean, I understand your point. It's a really interesting point. I mean, but we all kind of, it's okay. It's nice. In this life, we do have family. And it's nice to see who your family was, you know. I mean, there's nothing wrong.
Your immediate parents, when you think about karma and being rebirth, what I would think was my maternal grandmother isn't. Is that the case?
It's true, but we do, I mean, as humans, or even as creatures, we identify with groups, don't we? So that's what that comes from. We identify with, and a family seems, and of course because it's reiterated by the materialist view that we've got their blood. We think it's coming, our mind is coming from them, so it's an extra powerful way to, that's right, but the Buddhist view, no, I mean, yeah, you do it out of interest, but not really. I wouldn't care much. Because next life you can be a dog, you know, don't waste your time worrying about who your mummy was.
You get the results back and it says, oh, you've got in your DNA 93% Caucasian or something.
I know, exactly, I know.
You know.
I know, exactly. So, let's say you're a white supremacist and you're so delighted because you're 100% white. Nobody has 100% white, or what they mean by white, God knows. But next life you get born a black person, so don't hold on to it, you know. I mean, just relax.
I get that from your side.
I know that, darling, I know that. But I'm giving you the way to think about it.
Oh, so you've got
Who
like
cares?
20%.
But who cares? I mean, who cares in the end? This is how we are. We're attached to groups, aren't we? And labels and races and genders and things, you know.
It's not really.
It's an attachment, darling. It's okay, we do lots of things of attachment. It's okay, it's nice, fun to think about it, but...
Well, if I just keep that to myself, then Mum will be happy. I'm doing it.
Well, she was.
For it.
Yeah, of course, you never do it, darling, it's okay. Who else, people? Any other questions? Yeah, go.
What determines when the karmic seed is ripe?
Well, that's what I was saying back there to Andrew. It's, you know, it's incredibly subtle and nuanced and sophisticated. So what determines exactly what plant ripens at what moment? If you really know botany super well, you can determine these things, can't you? It's all there in the knowledge that you're able to know that eventually. But in general, you know, the stronger seeds ripen first, the more heavy ones, good or bad, the ones planted first, simple, in the same way. But obviously to know it really well is quite sophisticated, and we can learn it very well as you get more advanced. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Yeah, people, someone, yes.
Is it not only to learn it?
What's that?
Is it not only to learn it?
I can't hear you so well, I'm so sorry.
Is it not only to learn it, but to experientially understand it, which you've mentioned? Yes.
The only reason you learn botany is to apply it. I mean, it's really unusual, do you not think that you read... I mean, you could read botany books and know all about theoretically, but the real benefit of knowing botany is so you plant a garden. Well, same here. The real benefit of doing this, the only benefit, is so you can apply it in your life, use it to explain what's happening now, and then inform your future actions, your present actions. That's the whole point. And this is the very first basic level of practice in Buddhism. But often it's a surprise because most people who are Buddhists don't even think about karma. Do you understand? Yeah, that's the point of it. It's such a different view, it takes us time, you know. Isn't it? Such a different view. Yeah.
It's very comforting.
That's interesting, isn't it?
It's comforting.
That's interesting. Because you know you're in charge.
Because you know you're in charge, and you know that when something's right with, that's it, finish with.
Okay, that's good. That's a good way. That's right. Some of my friends in prison feel that too. They think some people freak out at karma. They can't bear it.
Yeah.
No, I understand. Very interesting. So that's all. Now where we go now? Let's think about it. We've done a little bit about karma, and so we have to look into the delusions, which is high school. We've been in junior school. No, let's look into vows now. It's still junior school. First level, Buddha says, don't do this and that. Then we start getting more serious. And we say you firmly take refuge as a Buddhist. At that time, often you would then also take the 5 laypersons' vows. So the Buddha vows, psychologically speaking, are really potent. He loves his vows. So he's trying to describe why they're powerful and why it's an easy way to help purify your mind and create lots of virtuous karmic seeds in your mind. So, okay. First of all, in general, we know when we make a strong determination to do something, that's when we'll do it, isn't it? Even if you say, oh, I must go on a diet. Yeah, I should go on a diet. 27 years later, I must go on a diet. Then one day we say, I will go on a diet. Well, guess what? Everything changes. So when I will is volition, that's intention, and that's the beginning of every action. I must come and have lunch one day, Robina. I'd love to have lunch. Next year, come and have lunch one day, Robina. I'd love to have lunch. Come to lunch next week, Robina. I will come to lunch. Then you do it. We've got to see the difference between fantasy and I will. Volition is powerful, and that's intention, and that's the beginning of the process of creating karma, quote unquote. So, and it's the meaning of the word, mental action. Karma means action, and mental action is the real one, and that's intention. And every millisecond in our mind there is intention. It drives everything we do. But it's also spontaneous and instinctive, we don't notice. That's the tragedy. So, okay. So we know when you make a strong determination to do something or a determination to refrain from something, it's more powerful. It's kind of obvious. And it guides, when you decide, I will go on a diet or I won't eat too much, it really determines everything you do. It's always there, like standing on the shoulders, and your own decision is guiding, informing your choices. Every meal you have, you're checking up. Are you sticking to it? So it's obviously more powerful than merely not, just even merely not eating so much one day is less powerful in terms of the imprint in your mind than deciding I will not eat much one day. Can you see the difference? It's more powerful. So the actions that follow that will be more deep in the mind. They'll leave deeper imprints. That's the power of intention. So, there's more to it, but there's more to it than that. So, given that at the time of death, bottom line, we want a bank vault of bucket loads of delicious, rich, intentional, non-killing karmic seeds just to get another human body. Forget about all the rest. Just to get a decent human body, So then, now let's think of our lives. I mean, these days there's so many exterminators around, so many, you don't meet many creatures. I mean, I haven't met a fly yet in Bendigo. Maybe it's not summer, that's why, isn't it? They all go off and die or something in winter, don't they? I mean, in some countries you hardly ever meet flies at all. I mean, but if you live in India, it's like Jurassic Park in the rainy season. I promise it's like Jurassic Park in the rainy season. I remember our hotel one night in Sarnath, and these big fat birds, these creatures slamming up against your window. It's like birds. It was incredible. You go to Bodh Gaya, where the Buddha got enlightened, people all go there in the rainy season. As dusk comes, the entire ground is a carpet of living beings, big fat creatures. It's impossible to move an inch without slaughtering, I mean, you're just bombarded. So it's almost good because every second you're thinking, I must not kill, I must not kill, I must not kill. You're creating lots of good karma, but I must not kill. Do you understand? Yes. So now, we're sitting in this room now, nobody's barging at us, there's no creatures biting us, there's no flies around, there's no mozzies, there's no ants, there's no ex-husbands wanting to kill you, right? So we're sitting here resting on our laurels, not having ever a thought to not kill. So we're not creating any virtuous karma of non-killing. And you see my point? We think, we're nice people. But as long as ever says being nice is not enough. You've got to have the conscious intention, I will not kill, I will do this, I will not do that. Then you leave the imprint in your mind. So basically the irony is right now, while we're living in this place at this moment, in this room where no one's threatening us, where creatures aren't biting us, it's because of our past non-killing. That's the irony. We're resting on the laurels of our past not killing, but we're not creating any more. That's like eating up all your cauliflowers in your garden, feeling so lucky, forgetting to plant more cauliflowers. So we've got to plant more non-killing karmic seeds. Do you see my point? So that's very difficult if you're not meeting creatures to kill. Because just by being a nice person, you're not creating any virtuous karma of non-killing, or non-stealing, or non-lying. You're resting on your laurels. So how do you make sure every second of the day you're ticking over virtuous karmic seeds and dropping them into your bank vaults? By living in vows. This is Buddha's deal. He loves vows. They say vows are so powerful, they're like a subtle physical form visible to clairvoyance. So we're talking psychologically here. A vow is where you, like a set of Buddhist vows, you know. So let's say you decide to take refuge formally in front of somebody. Then you decide you're going to take the 5 laypersons' vows. So you'd sit in front of that person and then you repeat after them 3 times. So what you're doing is, let's say, you know, like when I do, because Lama Zopa's given me permission, I wouldn't do it here because as a resident teacher, but in other places where I might do it. So what's happening is I got these vows and vows from my teacher. And they got them from their teacher. And they got them from their teacher. And they got them from their teacher. It's a living oral lineage tracking itself back 2,500 years back to Mr. Buddha. I find that kind of tasty, kind of powerful. You understand what I'm saying? Like you're plugged into this power source of real living human beings, hopefully keeping those vows, keeping them intact and alive. It's like an oral lineage right to the present. Do you understand my point? And we understand that. My mother was a musician. She got it from her musician. She got it from her teacher. And then track it back to Bach. It's a living lineage of real knowledge about music. It's very alive. It's very powerful. So in this way, vows are to be so powerful. So you sit in front of that person, you know, so when I took my vows from Lama Zopa, and I repeat, I will never kill. From this moment until the day I die, I will never kill. I will never lie. I will never steal. I will never this. That's a powerful decision to make. And like I said, Buddha says the vows are like this subtle energy in your mind. In your physical body that can be seen by clairvoyance. That's what they say. So Lama Zopa says this is the Buddha's teaching. 24 hours a day that you're keeping that vow, even when you're not thinking about it, like now in the room, because of the power of vow, you're ticking over virtuous karmic seeds into your bank vault. And not just that, you're putting atomic bombs under the habit to kill, to lie, to steal. So he says literally you can't get ahead of the game. You can't get ahead in your practice without living in vows of morality. And it's the easiest way to create virtue. We want to create bucket loads of virtuous karmic seeds. Just at the time of our death, we have plenty of karmic seeds right there. Lie, no killing, no stealing, at this basic level of refraining from harming. It's very proactive. That's how they say. But of course we've got to think about this. Doesn't seem so evident to us. So vows are so powerful, they say. And then also because you know you've got them, they're protecting you all the time. Because you're constantly aware. I don't want to kill. I don't want to lie. I don't want to steal. I don't want to jump on the wrong partner. As soon as you start fancying the other boyfriend, you're checking out. No, I've got a vow to not cheat on my partner. So it protects you. Vows protect you. They say like that. It's really true, you know. It's like your own conscience. Right there. You made a decision. You're not feeling guilty because God is going to punish you. Nothing like that. You are the one who made it. You're the one who made it, the vow, and you want to keep it. It's for your benefit, you know. Yeah.
I'm just curious to make the comparison between, say, vows of marriage.
Yes.
Where they don't hold much weight. They don't seem to hold much weight.
Anymore, you mean? Yeah. Because why? I mean, because...
I don't understand. If you're saying that vows, when you make a vow, it's quite important and you hold to it, why are vows of marriage?
Well, you know, I mean, that's, you see, in the Buddhist, there's no concept of a vow not to have... There's no concept of vow to only be living with one person. That's a Christian teaching, a completely Christian teaching. That, you know, it's a gift from God. You're only allowed to have sex with a special thing God gives you, and you can only do it with His blessing, and it's forever. There's no concept like that about relationships in Buddhism, none whatsoever. I'm just giving you the Buddhist answer. There's no vow to live together with one person. There's no vow like that. So
I'm more saying, say, a vow to say treat me with respect.
What, darling?
Say a vow in marriage to treat me with respect, to love you until death do us part. Well, that doesn't hold up very much. I'm just wondering why vows like that don't, and yet you're saying that when...
Wonder why what? Sorry.
Wonder why marriage vows aren't holding up.
Because we don't take them seriously, I'd say. Oh, we don't take them seriously, and because we don't think, we see it as romantic, I think we see it as kind of cute and nice and make our own lovely, and I think it's based on, I'm not being rude about this, based on attachment, and I think we're not recognising how deep attachment is and how deep anger is and how deep jealousy is and the intensity of a personal relationship. It's like you're living in a fire, it seems to me, but in the beginning it's like romantic, it's fantasy, isn't it? And we don't take it very, some people don't take it very seriously. Some people do. I think it's because we don't take the vow seriously. It's like romantic a bit. I would suggest that. It's my own thought. We don't take it deadly seriously. Do you understand? If we did take it seriously, we'd really work on it. Wouldn't we? Do you understand? Does that make sense? That's my own view. So, okay, vows then. So we've got different levels of vows. This is the first level of practice related to this first, level. You take the vows of individual liberation. The vows of a monk and nun are the same level. And individual liberation is the vows that help you achieve your nirvana, your individual liberation, prati moksha. The next level are the bodhisattva vows, and that's the compassion wing. We'll discuss that later. So the other part of karma that's so powerful, to really make our practice powerful, is to purify karma. There's no karma that can't be changed. It's not set in stone. And that's one of the great sufferings we have. I'm a bad person, I did this and I did that, and we really believe I'm in my nature bad, so we get so distressed, It's not like that in Buddhism. It's much more dynamic, it's impermanent. There's no negative action that we have done that has sown seeds in our mind that we can't uproot before they ripen, of course. There's no karma that can't be purified. There's nothing set in stone. So this concept in Christianity, for example, that you go to hell forever, there's no concept like that. Not in the sense of being in samsara. In samsara, nothing can be forever. You put a certain amount in the petrol tank, you get a certain amount of suffering, a certain amount of happiness, and then it runs out. It's highly dynamic. Once you've achieved realization of emptiness, and you've achieved liberation from suffering, that is forever. That's different. But within samsara, it cannot be forever. So Buddha even asserts realms of existence like the Christians do, but they're not made by God. You're not sent there by anybody. You create that with your own mind. As long as Yeshi said, hell is not some place where the devil is waiting saying, ha, I'm waiting for Tibet and Yeshi. Hell is the manifestation of the negative energy of that sentient being. It's like the karmic appearance of that sentient being. That's the way we talk about all the realms of existence, including human. We don't create this. We create these scenarios. It's a subtle concept. We don't get it, It's all there in the literature. The more we practice and think about it and study it, the more we can put it together, So, what did I say all that? What was I saying?
Purification.
What was I saying?
You're talking about purification.
Thank you very much, purification, okay. So what's that mean? Well, all this is, the first level of practice. You don't want suffering until you try to behave better. Then you start to look into Buddhism a little bit, you think about it, and then you decide you're going to become a Buddhist, take refuge, you take the 5 low vows, and then you purify as well. So if you have those tools under your belt, you can say with certainty, before we even start to look at the mind too much, you've already got a really good set of practices, you've got a really good life, you're controlling your body, controlling your speech, beginning to subdue your mind, living in vows, and purifying your negative karma. You can die with a happy mind. And you'll just go straight to another decent human rebirth and keep on bopping on your spiritual practice. It's logic. Karma takes care. We can relax, So, purification, Lama Zopa says, we are insane not to do it every day. So given this idea that our mind goes back and back, given that every millisecond what we think and do and say sows seeds, so it follows logically, we've had countless past lives, we've created countless negative actions, we've got countless negative seeds in our bank vault that haven't yet ripened. They're waiting for the conditions to manifest as our suffering, including suffering rebirth. We've already planted the seeds. There's countless. You can almost say if we would have created any more from now, we would never run out of past lives. We'd never run out of future lives. So we've got to get ahead of the game and put atomic bombs under them before they ripen. So the most urgent level of practice is stop creating causes for more suffering. The next level is purify the seeds you've already planted before they ripen as suffering. It's kind of common sense, You don't just not sow more weeds. You've got to grab the weeds before they grow and put stuff in it and pull them out, basically. Okay, that's purification. So there's 4 steps. The 4 R's, really easy to remember. The first one is you acknowledge. And the Lamas all use the analogy of taking poison. It's a really good one. This is again the doctor analogy, the mentor-doctor analogy is really the good one for our relationship with the Buddha. So a negative action is one that you've done that's sowed a seed in your mind that'll ripen as you're suffering, and guess what? You don't want suffering, so you better pull it out quick, smart. So the first step is you have to acknowledge that you sowed that damn seed. So we can deduce that we must have done all the negative actions. There's no negative action we haven't done, Buddha says. So you just regret the lot, you know. But the first, it's a really helpful practice at the end of the day to think of the stuff you've done today. It reminds you, stuff that you've done today. And all of us have some relationships with some people, even if the car's on the road, we're going to get angry with somebody, annoyed with this, kick the dog, whatever you do. Little baby things. Okay, if you raped and killed as well, that too. So at the end of the day, you kind of clean up your act. And I like to think of this practice as like becoming your own friend. Don't think of it as religion. And we have all these formal ways we do it, we rings our bells and sing Sanskrit prayers. Forget all that. Keep it really down to earth, really simple, really psychological. It's you talking to yourself, you sorting out your own rubbish, you being your own therapist. It's very important. So the first one is you have to acknowledge, I badmouthed this, I fought with my brother, I said this, I hurt somebody else. Simple, simple, simple things. And when you go, you know what, Robina, I regret having done that. Why, you say to yourself? Because guess what? I don't want those seeds to ripen in the future as my suffering, because I'm sick of suffering. That's the logic of regret. It's not guilt. Absolute certainty it is not guilt. But our trouble is we run to guilt. We love guilt. So we go, I did this and I did that and I did this, and we go, oh, I'm a bad person. No, not valid, irrelevant, wrong. We must change that one. You go, I did this and I did that, and then you go, what can I do to help it? What can I do to fix it? That's the proactive one. That's the virtuous one. That's the self-respectful one. Got to change it very consciously. So then you might as well remember all the things, think of the things you've done in this life you can't remember, or the ones you can remember. You did this, you had the abortion, you killed the fish, you did that, whatever you did. And you say again, and I regret this. Why? Because I don't want these to ripen as future suffering. It's talking to yourself. You're acknowledging things you've done that are causing you suffering. It's just like the analogy of eating the wrong food. I smoked cigarettes all those years. I didn't know I was dumb enough. I didn't know I was causing myself suffering. Of course I regret that. Of course I regret that, because why? I don't want cancer. It's logic, you know. It's self-respectful. Then best to go, and you know what, Robina? Anything I've ever done since the beginning of this time is my body and my speech to harm any sentient being, period. I regret from the depths of my heart, because I do not want future suffering. That's the concept of regret, you know. It's wholesome, it's self-respectful, it's intelligent, based upon the view of karma, of course. Then, of course, if you're a Buddhist and you've got vows and commitments and things, and you regret having broken them very sincerely. And then you can also regret your ridiculous delusions, because they're the source of the problem. Old habits and everything, your anger, your depression, your jealousy, I'm sick of this suffering, fed up with it, look at the harm I'm doing myself. So then that's regret. There you go, well, where's the doctor? Whom can I turn to? Quick, I've just eaten this poison. Whom can I turn to, please, to give me the medicine to stop it, to apply the antidote? That's the next step, reliance. In this case, Buddha's our doctor. And this again is the crucial difference between the Christian view and the Buddhist view. Just to know the difference, we should be understanding it properly. So if I'm a Christian, I do acknowledge what I've done wrong, but then I have to turn to God, whose law I've broken, and beg him to forgive me. That's whom you rely upon. But the process is to be forgiven. You've got to be forgiven, because being forgiven by God is what purifies you. This has got nothing to do with the Buddha. He would forgive you. He is a nice person, but it's not his job. That's like asking a doctor to forgive you for smoking so that you get off getting cancer. It just doesn't work like that. It's not the Buddha's view at all. It's a very distinct difference. So psychologically, we've got to be clear about that. Otherwise it gets all muddled and we get all confused, So how do we use the Buddha? He's our doctor. Basically, it's the best way to say it. He's our doctor. We've decided that we're relying upon a doctor. We've checked up on this doctor. We've checked up on his methods. So we like his methods. So we are happy to find a doctor who's got methods that I can use to help fix myself. That's the attitude. So if we do it as a meditation, we might do it this weekend. We do it as a little meditation. We visualize above our heads a particular aspect of Buddha coming from Tantra called Vajrasattva. We'll discuss that later. This is the Buddha in a particular form. So we visualize above our heads. At this point, we do a little kind of delighting in refuge, say a prayer. Or just, for me, it's more real to think, well, I'm so happy that I found a doctor who's got the methods to help me purify myself. But there's a second part to the second step. It's called reliance. And it's odd because the second part is where they talk about now we cultivate compassion for those we have harmed. The regret is like compassion for yourself. Now you think of others that you've harmed this time. Now it's for their sake. You regret for their sake. So the reason they call it reliance, you rely upon sentient beings, is a very particular way the Tibetans talk. Maybe it's the whole way they talk in the Bodhisattva path. It's a bit odd initially, but try to understand me. At this second step, we're trying to now have compassion. The first one is like the first step of practice. It's like understanding suffering, knowing the causes and being sick of it, so regretting what you've done because you don't want suffering. The second one is now compassion for those we've harmed. So we rely upon sentient beings, they say, in the sense that we are now trying to have compassion. We're trying to cultivate compassion. So if we want to cultivate compassion, how can you cultivate compassion if you never hear about or meet suffering sentient beings? It's not possible. So you need to know about suffering sentient beings in order to cultivate compassion. Because compassion is, oh my God, look at that suffering. What can I do to help? If you never meet suffering sentient beings, how can you ever have compassion? So therefore we need suffering sentient beings. We don't need them to suffer, but you rely upon the presence of suffering in order for you to cultivate this powerful compassion that makes you want to help others. That's the context. So the second part, you think of those you have harmed. The baby you aborted, the fish you killed, the husband you cheated on, whatever. And you try to have strong compassion. Regret, in other words, for their sake, because you want to now benefit sentient beings instead. Now, if you're brave enough, you can also cultivate compassion for those who've harmed you. This is a more advanced level. This is the Bodhisattva level. But if we can, fantastic. And so why would I have compassion for someone who's harmed me? Well, just as those young Tibetan nuns said, because I know I harmed them in the past and I know that they're going to suffer in the future because of the harm they caused me. That's the basis of compassion. That's the basis of really powerful compassion. But if you're not ready for it, you don't go there. You don't go there, you know. So next step, the remedy. You apply the antidote, they call it, or here the 4 R's, it's the remedy. So in this context, as a meditation, we would then do this visualization of nectar coming from Vajrasattva while purifying at different levels and then reciting the mantra of Vajrasattva. But this third step, the antidote, the remedy, anything, there's a whole medicine cabinet of medicines, of remedies. Anything can be the antidote. So in your daily life, if I'm regretting killing, in my life I apply the antidote of saving lives. You know, in my life, if I'm regretting lying, I make sure I tell the truth. Doing the opposite is an antidote. We must anyway do that. But in this particular meditation, all the Lamas praise. It's really potent. Because any practice we tend to do that involves the Buddha is said to have much more power. We need to think about that too, but it kind of makes sense that we do think about it. The Buddha's not doing it, you're doing it, but you're relying upon the Buddha, you're relying upon this visualization, you're imagining this nectar, you're imagining this mantra purifying, and mantras are said to be very powerful. So the third step is you do this visualization and the recitation of the Bodhisattva mantra. And the fourth step, the most important, Pamonka Rinpoche says, the resolve to not do it again, or to change. And that's really obvious. If you don't regret the action you did, if you don't take responsibility and acknowledge you did it and regret it because you don't want suffering, then you can never ever resolve not to do it again. So that's our part of our problem. We never even admit we did things. We try to get off the hook. We try to blame people. So we never acknowledge and therefore regret. Therefore we never have compassion. Therefore we never try to change. So we're stuck in this cycle of misery, you know. So this last one is most powerful. You make determination to change. You be very specific with yourself. You know, you don't lie to yourself like Lama Zopa says. If it's something that's really a deep habit, you don't say, I'll never badmouth a boyfriend again. It's your commonest habit. You know? And even some of our vows, if we've taken Bodhisattva vows, there are quite a few, we really can't. It's hard to keep some. You've got to be very precise with yourself. And you don't lie to yourself, you know. But the ones you can say, like, I will never kill. I will never lie. And the point about this is, every time you say that, you dig deeper the groove in your mind of never killing, of never lying, of never stealing, and you also strengthen the habit, therefore, to never kill, never lie. And you also purify the tendencies to do that. So it's super powerful. And if you've got vows to not kill, already that's powerful. This increases the power. So it's utterly necessary. That's why Lama Zopa says we're insane not to do this practice every day. It's brilliant psychology, and that really is true. This stuff is psychology. Buddha didn't say psychology. He didn't speak Greek, okay? It's the mind. We confuse it with religion is different. It's not. In Buddhism, spiritual equals psychological. Honestly, not kidding. All of Buddhism is psychological. All of Tantra, all these deities, this weird stuff that we look at, and we discuss all that. That's all basic psychology. It's all about your mind. It's tools to help your mind. That's it. Any questions? Any questions about that? Yes, Andrew.
Just on the intention that if let's say you're still alert for bread to survive.
What's that?
Let's say you're still alert, you're really starving.
You still what?
You're starving.
You're starving, okay then. Yeah.
And you're still alert for bread.
Okay.
You're not sorry because you would have died. But
You mean you're not regretting it?
Do it.
Oh no, okay, it's not like that. It's not like that. That's not the reason. That's not about regret. That's a really good point. It's a very common misconception. People say, "But I had no choice then." What do you mean I regretted? No, it's a complete not the right understanding at all. Okay.
How would that work?
Okay, I'll tell you. It's called stealing, right?
Yeah.
It's called taking the ungiven. So you would have put, even though your motivation mightn't have been so wicked, you did leave an imprint in your mind, didn't you, that would cause you to steal again. Would you agree with that? And it could also cause you to be stolen from. Do you agree with that? Do you agree with that? If we take the view of karma, right? So then, of course, you would regret the fact that you felt you had no choice at that time. You regret the fact that you had to do it because you left a seed in your mind. So of course you have to regret it because you want to purify that seed. You don't say, oh, well, I shouldn't have done it. That's what you're saying is I shouldn't have done it. That's a meaningless concept. Shouldn't have done it is absurd and meaningless. You did do it. We're acknowledging the fact that you planted a negative seed. So, of course, you say, I regret having done that because the conditions at the time, I felt I had no choice. So, of course, you regret that you put that seed in your mind and it's going to keep growing until you pull it out. And how you pull it out is 1, regret. 2, have compassion. 3, do the practice. And 4, vow not to do it. So it's a process of finishing it and cleaning it up. Do you see the point?
Yeah, I do.
Thank you. Next.
So then is it that I regret that stealing is wrong, or the regret?
No, you're just being too moralistic. You're being too, no, you didn't hear what I said then. I said it, but I'll have to say it again. Let's pretend it's an ordinary thing in life like smoking cigarettes. When you smoke cigarettes, when I was smoking cigarettes back in the 60s and actually in the 50s, when I was 13, I wanted to be like Jimmy Dean. I wanted to be his girlfriend. I called myself Judy, but I also wanted to look like him. It was very intense. So I even cut my hair short to look like Jimmy Dean. And I called myself Judy, his girlfriend, in Rebel Without a Cause, right? So it's really intense identification. So I had these pictures of Jimmy Dean with a cigarette out of his mouth, hanging out in New York with his leather jacket, his red jacket that he wore in Rebel, with a cigarette out of his mouth. I was obsessed with it, you know. So I cut my hair short to look like him, and I stole my mother's Garrick cigarettes. When we lived in Murrumbidgee when I was 13, and I used to try and put in the mirror and smoke like Jimmy Dean did, okay? That's why I started smoking. So never mind, this is a story, that was all. So as I smoked more and more, and at some point I was up to 80 Marlboros a day. When I was on marijuana and on speed, then I was on 80 Marlboros a day. So anyway, the point is I'm getting at this. I never thought about cancer. I didn't think about it, I didn't care, who cares, you know? So then later on, let's just say I started having, I didn't have, in fact, fortunately my lungs are sort of okay, but let's just say I started to see the tendency to get cancer. You understand, Andrew? So obviously I look back and I go, what a fool. I didn't know what I was doing. I was ignorant. I didn't know the consequences of my actions. I didn't know that I was polluting my lungs. Are you hearing me, Andrew? Now that makes sense. So then, of course, what you're going to say is, I really regret that I didn't have the wisdom then to not know what to do. I regret having done that, and that leads you to think, that's the point now about regret, the natural next step is, what can I do to fix it? Can you hear that, Andrew? You don't go, oh, it's wrong. What do you mean by wrong? You harmed yourself, Andrew. You harmed yourself by lying. So you want to fix it. So you first acknowledge you did do it. You recognize you felt you had no choice, but you nevertheless still put a seed in your mind, and you don't want that to grow. So you think, well, what can I do to pull the damn seed out and fix it? It's common sense. What can I do to stop the cancer coming? It's out of your own sense of self-respect. You don't want the karmic results. Are you understanding me now? Are you sure?
I think so.
You've heard it many times, Andrew. At least 30 times. Are you sure you don't get it? You don't still get it? Say it back to me in your words. Say it back to me.
It's the fact that at that point you kind of can look back and then say, hey, I didn't understand that. So even if you're starving, your mindset at that point was saying you had to do it, but later on you have the wisdom to say, well, that wasn't your only choice, and you regret not having the wisdom.
No, you're saying too many. You make it too complicated.
That's what I'm saying.
No, listen. You still got a thing there of like you're naughty. Don't think of it this way. You're looking. If you recognise, like with smoking, I use that as a good example because we recognise because it's the body. So smoking can cause cancer, right? Yeah. Stealing can cause you to continue to kill. Stealing can cause you to be stolen from. It's the same logic. There are consequences to you of your negative action. There are consequences to you of smoking. Can you see that point of the analogy? It's consequences to you that will be causing you suffering. So now, you don't want suffering, do you, Andrew?
No.
And you don't want to be stolen from, do you?
No.
And you don't want to continue to steal, do you? So you recognise that now. And you go, oh my God, I didn't realise that then. What a fool, I didn't know what I was doing to myself. You're not trying to get yourself off the hook. Well, I was starving, I couldn't help it. You're trying to do that, you see. And that's what we try to do. We try to get ourselves off the hook. It wasn't my fault. That's got nothing to do with it. You own it. You recognise you didn't understand it then. What a fool I was. Of course, I regret that I didn't have any more. I regret that I did it because it's now leaving the seed in my mind. So I better see what can I do about it and how to fix it, how to purify it before it ripens as my suffering. It's a simple, practical thing, like the cancer one. No getting off the hook. No, it's not my fault. That kind of thing. None of that. You with me? Andrew? What's your doubt?
My doubt is that you understand, so you come from an understanding that stealing is bad.
No, just keep it, please, stop. Stealing is something that's going to harm you. Don't stop saying bad. Okay, what do you mean by bad, Andrew?
As in, it's going to cause you negative karma.
Thank you. And not even those words. Keep it more simple. It's going to cause you suffering. Yeah. Keep it simple. Yeah. And you don't want suffering.
But then you're making the judgment call of that suffering.
But judgment call? Excuse me, you don't judgment call when you say smoking will cause you cancer. It's the result of research that cancer comes from smoking. It's not a judgment call. It's called evidence. It's called scientific.
You're making a judgment call on dying is better than stealing is better than dying.
What? Just stop, please, wait. Excuse me, you make it so complicated. What are you saying, Andrew?
I'm saying, so you're making the judgment call that I don't want to die, so I'm going to do that.
No, you're missing the point, Andrew. I'm using a simple analogy that we all get in our life. The simple point of the analogy, death or not death isn't the point. The simple analogy is, we know that food and smoking cigarettes, for example, can have consequences that will cause me sickness. Do you accept that? And I don't want sickness. That's all the point. Death is not the issue. I don't want suffering. At a physical level, we get that and we're not moralistic about it. It's like we thank the doctor for warning us. Do you get the point? It's simply that we don't want suffering. One level of suffering is a physical one. The other is karmic. It's more subtle. The principle is not death or not. It's suffering. That's all. And we realise that what we did in the past is now causing this suffering. What I did in the past will now ripen as me getting stolen from. So that's the point. I don't want suffering, Andrew. It's very humble and simple. And I realise what I did in the past will ripen as that suffering. So what am I going to do before it ripens? It's out of self-respect. Can you hear it now? A bit better. Andrew?
Yeah, I'll think about it.
Thank you very much. I'm most happy. Yes, Celeste, what's your point?
I'm just wondering if you're thinking...
Bit louder, Robin.
I'm just wondering if you're thinking you can't regret it because the poverty is an immediate situation.
The poverty? What?
In which makes them steal.
But that's the issue. None of us the issue. That's what he's saying already, but none of us the issue.
I'm just wondering how can there be regret in the moment if tomorrow he's also in the same situation?
But then none of that's the issue. It's too complicated.
Is it?
Yes. That's like saying, oh, you know, how can I say I won't eat sugar? What if sugar comes to me tomorrow? I'll be forced to eat sugar. Well, even though I get diabetes, it's not my fault. That's so moralistic. It's so complicated. It's so self-centered. You know, if you really had strong morality, if you really had strong virtue, you'd never want to steal. You'd find another bloody way to nourish yourself. That's what's a dumb example, a loaf of bread, for God's sake. There's many ways of nourishing yourself. You guys start, I know to say it's not the issue here. It's much more simple than that. Much more fundamental. It's not moralistic. Poor, not poor, maybe tomorrow I have to do it. That's why if you take vows, you know you do not want. Nobody wants. Look at the way we look at nutrition labels on food now. It is unbelievable. Do you understand my point? People, mummies with children might, the things that are, we would never in a million years ever, even if there's the slightest hint of a peanut in a food, we would rather the child starve than give it to them. Because we're so rigorous in understanding that some things bring consequences. So you wouldn't just be weak and think, oh, I can't help it. Can I please not get diabetes because I can't help it? Excuse me. What, Andrew?
Then I'll make a practice of, I've done something that I don't regret.
I can't hear you, dear.
If I've done something that I don't regret.
Like what?
I don't, it's personal.
Andrew, make it up then. But
That's what I was trying to do with the loaf of bread.
Well, make it up. But then you're not hearing, then you're not understanding the point. Then you're not understanding the point. You're like saying, I do not regret smoking cigarettes. Why would you say that when you know it'll cause you harm? Why would you see, you're still talking about it from a Judeo-Christian view of punishment. Reward. I'm allowed. It's not my fault. If you understand there are consequences to you of suffering, you of course would acknowledge you did it and would regret it because you don't want it to ripen as you're suffering. It's as down to earth as that. But even though you say it's bad, all those kind of things, you know. And if you regret doing something that's harmful to others, then you're really in serious trouble. You're demented, you're proud, you're stubborn, you're absurd. Can you not hear me, Andrew?
I hear what you're saying, but I don't think I'm getting my point across correctly.
No, you're just not getting the answer properly.
Maybe.
I'm sorry to be rude. I'm not describing your philosophy, it might be a different view. I'm only giving you the Buddhist one, and I can't explain it better to you because you're not hearing it in the way the Buddhists say it. You're hearing it in your way, with your connotations and your overtones, and that's fine, but I can't help you better than say these words. And if you try to get yourself out of your view to hear this view, you're going to be in trouble. You don't have to accept this view. You don't have to accept this view, Andrew. But if you can't hear it properly because you've got your view in the way, and that's part of the problem. So you've got allopathic medicine and acupuncture, you're trying to squeeze them together, and you can't. So try, again, it's a good example for everybody. Tell me what you think I'm saying. Tell me simply what you think I'm saying.
Well, okay. But it's complicated because I don't think you've heard me say.
You keep repeating that, you kindly just say back what I'm saying and see if that fits in your mind.
You're saying that that if you have the intention, that you have to, so you either have to be sorry that you've done it because you don't understand what that means and the negative impact that that's going to have on you in the future, so you would be sorry. If you're not sorry, then you don't understand the negative impact that it's going to have.
Clearly, it's logical. In this logic we're using here, like the logic that if you sow a seed in your ground that'll ripen as a poison thing, you don't want poison, so you have to regret when you pull it out. If you don't want cancer, you regret, you acknowledge you smoke cigarettes, and then you would try and fix it. If you don't mind you get cancer, then that's fine. This is the point here. It's not judgment, it's not reward, it's not good or bad, it's logic, knowing that everything we think and do and say, everything we plant in the garden will bring fruits. So you think, do I want those fruits? Because those seeds will bring those fruits. It's rigorous. If you don't mind having those fruits, then okay, fine, that's up to you.
So how would you cleanse that?
You can't!
Yeah, that's because you first have to realize that.
You've got to recognise what I mean by cleanse. You see, you're so holy, you can't cleanse. We're talking practical here, Pickle. So are you telling me, I'm not trying to be personal with you, that there's a thing that you've done to harm another, you're saying you don't regret. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, yeah.
So what you're saying is you've harmed another person.
Yeah.
But you don't regret that you did it. So in other words, you don't mind that you sowed a negative seed in your mind that will ripen in the future of you getting that kind of suffering. The theory...
I hear what you're saying, I get it.
But so you don't mind that?
Or I'll do it again, yeah, so I guess I don't mind it. Yeah.
So you don't mind the results. So I think it's because you're angry with this person and you think if I regret it, it's getting them off the hook. That's what you're thinking, I'd say. That's very typical. Not that.
No,
So what would be a thing...
To me, to do that harm was the best...
What, darling?
I view that to do that harm was the best situation for everything.
Okay, that's a different discussion. You're not telling me the whole story then. You just said the slope of the bread one is not the point. So then what you're describing then is something you did with a good... So this is different now. You did it with a good motivation.
Yeah.
That, you never said it. You never said it, Andrew.
You cut me off.
Don't you dare not say that to me. Don't you dare be so rude and arrogant. Screw you, Andrew. Grow up. I am debating with you kindly for 20 minutes to help you understand something. So don't you dare say that to me. Do you hear me? I'm your damn friend and I've been for many years. I cut you off. What a pathetic child. well, I'll say the rude word here, but on the camera I don't want to say that. How dare you say that, Andrew? It's so shocking. You should be embarrassed by that. I hope you are embarrassed. Shall I continue, boy? Thank you. So what you're telling me now is, the crummy bread one is a stupid example. You did an action that seemed to harm some people, but in general, as a general action that you thought was for the best of everybody. That's completely different, and you never said it once. You repeated the one of a stupid loaf of bread, which is self-centered. So you didn't tell me the right story. Not that you dare blame me for that, it's you, lack of clarity. So then your motivation was, what was your motivation? What was your reason? What was your motivation?
To not cause suffering or future suffering.
To whom?
To the person that I injured.
So you lied to a person? You saying you lied to a person?
You could say that.
What, darling?
You could say that.
And that benefited them? You thought they benefited from this lie? It caused them less pain to have the lie.
Yeah.
But your motive was to not harm them.
Yeah.
Well, that's not negative action, is it?
But in doing so, I would harm them. Let's say I would.
But, excuse me, you told me your motivation was pure. So if your motivation is pure, you didn't create negative karma, Andrew. That's a different scenario which you never told me before. Now it's completely changed. Now it makes sense. Now I understand. But you didn't understand because you know, now possibly you're going to now hear my point. Are you hearing the point now? You say your motivation was pure. That's for you to find out. Maybe it was just self-preservation. We often say we're doing it for the person's sake, but often it's our own sake. So if it really was pure, if it was pure, then it was valid. Therefore it wasn't negative. Therefore there's nothing to regret. But you never told me. Are you hearing me?
Yeah.
So it was your mistake, right? You agree with your mistake? Thank you very much, Andrew. Yes? What? It's an important point, though. We all went through this, right? Now you finally made sense. Oh, I cut you off. Oh, go.
There's situations, for example, someone who is kind and gentle and then gets...
That's what we have.
Someone who's kind and gentle...
Yes.
...gets dementia...
Yes.
...becomes violent and angry.
Yes.
Anyway,
yes.
I'm curious about what sort of karmic...
No, I think more fundamental, forget the karma, it's very interesting because there's nothing, you know, that anger has to have been in their mind. But this is the point, I think there's some people who don't have the aspect in their normal persona of showing their anger. They, as you said, sweet. But some people, when it really shows, when you've gone beyond control, as you get senile, it all just vomits out. It's all there. It can't come from nowhere. So that's often what happens. You can get a person who, I remember one person I met who never raised their voice, who never said bad words, who was really well behaved, and that's a good quality. But he said his mind was raging all the time. He talked about it. So that's, when you've got senility, you can't control it. So that means it was in that person's mind all the time, but they were not paying attention and didn't even know it. And that's a really common scenario. That's why we have to know our minds, you know. We have to recognise what's there. It's quite scary sometimes. And we don't, especially if you're not used to speaking it out, it's scary as hell to see your own mind, you know. Do you understand?
Yes.
It's very powerful. Yeah, because some people have just good, they have the karma to have good behaviour. They don't shout, they don't speak loudly, but their mind can be tumultuous with delusions, you know. Do you understand? That's a really good point.